a really important conversation in the aftermath of the coronavirus crisis, the economic impact it has had on the whole nation, in particular on Black-owned institutions and Black businesses. You probably recall that the first round of PPP funding that came from the federal government that was designed to try to help businesses survive the pandemic largely bypassed Black businesses and Black communities. And as a result, there was a high failure rate of small Black-owned businesses. Well, I want you to know that the same thing applies to Black cultural institutions and all of America's cultural institutions. And so we're here to talk about this latest round of PPP funding and the efforts to make sure that cultural institutions in general, performance venues, theaters, as well as Black-owned venues also benefit from that stimulus relief. And I can't think of a better guest than the guest we have on today. She is the global director of the Harold Washington Cultural Center in Chicago, the executive producer of Broadway in Bronzeville. Please welcome to the show, Jimelita Tillman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edmond, for having us here today.
Listen, before we jump into our conversation, and you already know I'm a huge fan and supporter of the Harold Washington Cultural Center, let's let our audience get a glimpse, just a glimpse, because they can't see everything, of what the Harold Washington Cultural Center has to offer.
Everybody get up, let's have a good time. Come on. We come to party, time to celebrate. We made it, whoa.
The state of the Harold Washington Cultural Center is the reason we are all gathered here today. We must thank our ancestors for paving the way.
And listen, everybody, that was just a taste. So if you ever get to Chicago, especially after the pandemic, even before the pandemic, if you get a chance to go through there, go to Bronzeville in Chicago, you want to check out the Harold Washington Cultural Center. But Jimelita, before we jump into our core conversation around what it takes for performance venues to survive and thrive, as we're continuing to battle our way through COVID, and of course, in the aftermath of COVID, I really want people to understand what you bring to the table. Yes, you're a playwright. Yes, you're a producer. So people might expect that of a director of a cultural center. But you're also someone from an executive side, really, really prepared for the unexpected. Now, nobody expected a global pandemic a year ago, but the bottom line is you're certified in risk management and emergency preparedness. A lot of people don't think about those things when they talk about running a major cultural venue. Talk to me about your story in terms of who you are, and also the legacy of Harold Washington Cultural Center. And we all know it's named after the legendary late mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for having us. And here at the Harold Washington Cultural Center, we pride ourselves on being committed to children, community, and culture. We like to take the kids off the streets and put them on the stage, be that acting, directing, producing, or behind the scenes, lighting, directing, cameras, the whole 9 yards. But we don't just stop there with stage. It goes into the whole gamut of dance and recording arts and science. And we've been very, very blessed throughout the years to crank out some amazing talent from right here on 47 and King Drive. We are sitting in the heart of what's called Chicago's Historic Blues District in Bronzeville. And at the Harold Washington Cultural Center, we have a 1,000-seat theater, a recording studio, a video editing lab, a full-service computer lab, 3 dance studios, a multi-purpose room, and it goes on and on right here in the community for us and by us. And what I'm very proud about our board of directors and what they take the initiative to do initially was to have a forward thought to make sure that our entire team, led by me, were trained in anything that could possibly happen. So going all the way back to the inception of the Harold Washington Cultural Center, we've always maintained our updates and certificates in emergency preparedness, risk management. How do you deal with everything from an active shooter all the way up to someone who's no longer an employee and runs off of your data? That is an emergency in itself. Luckily, we've never had to deal with anything like that, but these are things you have to be prepared for. So in Chicago, we don't have a lot of really torrential weather patterns and such, but we have to be prepared for how do we help other institutions preserve some of their materials that they might have gotten or thrifted, but they didn't know how to archive or chronicle that. So we've been trained here as a team to go out and be dispatched almost like the National Guard to assist other institutions across the country with dealing with emergency matters. And we were standing at the ready once this coronavirus and this pandemic hit. And now we're one of the leaders in turning that corner with virtual productions.
Now, and I really want to dive deep into that. Now, let me do a disclaimer, everyone. I'm a huge fan of the Harold Washington Cultural Center. Chicago happens to be one of my favorite cities. I have family there. I used to host a radio show on WVON in Chicago, legendary radio station in Chicago. I thought I knew the Cultural Center, but I learned a lot of the other things just in the past year. And just to give a little background, Jimelita Tillman is the daughter of civil rights icon and former Chicago alderman Dorothy Wright Tillman, and she's the mother of a 14-year-old environmental scientist with a master's degree who we profiled, Black Enterprise profile last year, as Dorothy Jean Tillman. So you're really talking about a really interesting legacy, fascinating legacy, in my opinion. So just to say that, I'm a big fan of the Harold Washington Cultural Center. I'm a supporter. And by the way, this is kind of a turning of the tables, because the first time we really ever talked was when you interviewed me for one of the virtual events for the Harold Washington Cultural Center that was specifically designed to be able to take place during this crisis. And that's why I kind of want to use that as a jumping off point. A lot of venues, a lot of theaters, maybe I would say most of them, maybe 90% of them have been shut down. You are one of the few that said, we will recognize and observe all COVID requirements and restrictions to keep people safe, but we will not shut down. We will find a way to keep going. And the event that I participated in was my first exposure to anything like that from any institution. But talk to me about that. I know you did a major New Year's Eve fundraiser. You have other things coming up. But what was your mindset as the leader and the executive leader of this institution to be able to keep this going, even with everything else that we're facing as a nation and as a world, actually?
One thing that we know about the performing arts and shows in general, be they comedy shows, stage productions, even a movie, it's cathartic. It's almost a place that you go to just leave it all behind. It's the fantasy world. You get a chance to come into a theater and you want to be able to just leave your worries behind. And we knew that we had to step in and step up and be responsible to the patrons of the arts and all of those that got a chance to work with us in various capacities over the years and provide them with a way to be able to entertain themselves online with the virtual shows, and then a way to safely produce the shows through rapid testing that we would do in order to be able to do the in-person virtual tapings. And we took a lot of care and pride in preparation with that. We knew that it was important for us to let our consumer know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's always been a battle for Black owned and operated institutions to maintain generationally. And what we wanted to make sure that they did not feel as though this pandemic was going to take us out. So we wanted to continue with shows. We began immediately after the pandemic hit and everything shut down. We started a Women's Writers Circle during Women's History Month. We did not hold it. We went ahead and held it, and we did it Zoom style initially until we figured out more about how it worked and how it rolled. And then we came around the corner for June, which was Black Music Month. And so we celebrated all the history of all those great people from Chicago, from Herbie Hancock all the way to Quincy Jones. We celebrated them all and their contribution. And that was our way of just keeping us relevant to our consumer base, direct to consumer. And now at that point, we said, you know what? Regardless of what happens after the pandemic, we want to still be able to continue this concept. So we worked very closely with a small Black tech firm out of Chicago called Highgate Management, owned and operated by Stephen Matthews, and he's from right here in Bronzeville. We worked closely with him to begin to produce content so that we're able to upload it, live stream it, and continue that activity. Once Steve came to the table, we said, let's look at a way to assist and support other theaters, institutions, and artists to be able to produce their virtual shows. So then we became somewhat of a stage studio for them as well. So not only were we providing our own content for our patrons, we were able to provide opportunity for other theater groups who may not be able to get their homes back as it pertains to their theater houses, because theater houses are closing left and right. But we at the Harold Washington Cultural Center, working closely with Highgate Marketing and Management Solutions, were able to come together and cultivate this idea and activity for providing a safe space for other performing artists and producers to put on their bodies of work.
You know, I want people to really get a picture in their heads of just everything that the Harold Washington Cultural Center has to offer. Now, again, I'm a fan, but it wasn't until when you interviewed me for the event you put together featuring me, which again was a small socially distanced gathering, a very small, small socially distanced gathering. This was a physical, but live streamed to Facebook and to YouTube, where obviously we reached a much broader audience. And that's you know what Steve Matthews has done in partnership with you to reach larger audiences while still being COVID safe. But it wasn't until when I came to do that event and you arranged for one of your staff to give me a tour that I really, I knew a thousand seat theater. Yeah, okay, I get it. But there's so much more to the Cultural Center for what you offer the community, what you offer artists. You've taken Broadway and Bronzeville to other countries, and I want to touch on that a little later in the conversation. But help people to understand exactly what a major resource as a culture. This is not like not to just smaller theater houses, but this is a really multifaceted venue that provides all kinds of programs. Can you give us a quick rundown of all the things that go on at the center and the features that you have?
Not only are we able to produce Broadway style and quality shows, we are a member of the League of Chicago Theaters, as well as the National Independent Venue Association, where we work closely with our various entities to make sure that if there's a stage manager that may not be within work, we do a lot of what I call speed dating, if you will, of a connector of resources for theaters that are in need and those that need that work, and we are able to connect them up. So we are a great conduit and a connector. During the pandemic, we have been providing field trip opportunities virtual via Zoom. We have been providing an opportunity for teaching artists to come and shoot and record their courses right here at the Harold Washington Cultural Center. Not just dance, not just theater, but it could be someone who's doing a walk down memory lane of the history of Chicago. We have the capabilities for them to develop their asynchronous, that is their online working modules for classes. The great thing about what we're doing here in the midst of the pandemic is that that teacher who normally would probably have that course for one class in one school, now they're able to produce that class around the world. And we think that that is a top-notch thing that we're going to be coming out of this pandemic with. Another thing here at the Harold Washington Cultural Center, we're home of Sammy Dyer School of Theater and Dance. Now, Sammy Dyer is one of the oldest institutions here in America, with 85 years long. And they've been strong, and we've been making sure that the young girls within ballet and acting, they have the place to continue to work out and to do the various calisthenics, because we have a full ballet studio for them to work socially distanced. Again, we know that this pandemic is a hard time, and we know we have to come out of it on the other side resilient and stronger, but it has taken a toll on the mental health of many people. Therefore, we host a lot of circle courses. We work closely with LCSWs to deal with some of the mental health side of what's going on. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their homes. So we've been able to set up some socially distanced in-person therapy activity here, as well as some telemedicine activity with our various partnerships. And we're very, very proud of that. No one tends to really think about how the arts and mental health goes hand in hand, but our team and our board of directors knew that that was someplace we needed to get to quickly. The youth and the seniors, they need it. So we've been having a lot of intergenerational activity, storytelling time. We've been capturing video that the seniors can tell their stories to the generations after. And then we've been having activities that get the young people more excited about not just performing arts, but science, technology, engineering, and math with our partnership with, you mentioned her earlier today, my daughter, Dorothy Genius. She has a STEAM camp that has been doing some amazing, fantastic things, keeping young people engaged in the sciences during the pandemic. So, what we were able to do was afford her a space to be able to produce her content, to be able to host her asynchronous courses. So, not only are we a home for theater and performing arts, but we're also a place for mental health solvency as well as the sciences.
And from what I saw on the tour, you also have dance, 3 dance studios, I guess you call them, for everything tap to ballet, computer lab. I mean, again, I just thought about, okay, there's a theater and there's a stage, but it really is a 360-degree cultural center in the fullest sense, both in terms of your technical capabilities as well as the types of cultural and artistic events you can host or support.
Mhm. Absolutely. It's crazy that you mentioned that. Karen Clark Sheard actually won a Grammy from recording here at our building. We've done
Wow.
some amazing things with Jennifer Hudson, Rakim of Arabian Rakim, Kiki Palmer, who was the first, everybody knows her as Aquila and the Bee, but she was the first Black woman to ever play Cinderella on Broadway. And that brings me to the fact that we are the only theater in the country, not Black theater, but the only theater in the country that takes a delegation of students to the Tony Awards every year. And the Tony Awards, for those who may not know, is the highest coveted award for Broadway musical theater. Thanks to our relationship with Al Kamation and Kevin McCullum, what we are able to do is our children, they get a whole New York experience. We come in, we stay at the W Times Square, and then we get a chance to hit it. We hit Broadway shows. From Thursday, we do a matinee and an evening show. Friday, we do an evening show. Saturday, we do matinee and evening. And then the Sunday before the Tonys, we do a matinee. We do the red carpet walk. They go to the Tonys, and then there's a big gala that happens at the plaza after it. And all of our youth and young adults get to go mix, meet, and mingle with Broadway royalty. Like, it's amazing what we've been able to do. And we've had some young people on Broadway. We've had Jeremy Payton, he was in Hairspray, in Kinky Boots. We've had Deshaun and Dante Brown. Dante was one, he played the Lion King. He played Simba, little Simba.
Wow.
And so we're really proud of the talent that we're cranking out from right here. And it gives hope to the other students that are from right here in Bronzeville. And not only that, not only do we produce shows and we produce talent on the Broadway, but this is a place that many students call home for their graduations, for teen summits, for youth peer career development. We host job fairs. We do it all when it comes to making sure that we are a one-stop shop for college and career goals for young people here in the city. And now, thanks to the pandemic, coincidentally, we're able to now offer these things online, virtual, as well as in person once we return. We're not going to go away from our virtual activity. We're going to use this to expand our reach. Did I tell you that our New Year's Eve show, who normally we have 1,000 people here at the Harold Washington, and it's traditionally a $100 ticket show, but this year we had to pause, pivot, and reset. We ended up doing our New Year's Eve show virtually, and we got over 15,000 people to tune in and counting. That lets me know that virtual is the wave of the future for a theater any size. So we're really, really proud of that opportunity that we were able to seize. We had the All-Stars, the Chicago Blues All-Stars perform. There was a lot of great talent from our Broadway and Bronzeville Rising Stars. And we're looking at doing more events and more activities just like that.
And to put a grace note on all of that, tell me about Broadway and Bronzeville and you taking productions abroad to other countries.
Well, thank you. Broadway in Bronzeville, we have our Broadway in Bronzeville that's here locally, that we do activities such as Page to Stage, where we work with youth and young adults to be able to work on their creative writing skills. And so it's everything from how do you course it out from the page to producing it on stage. And it is something to see a young person, young adult, see their body of work produced on stage. Now, whether they go into theater or not is a different story, but they're able to say, I created that from my mind and I saw it produced on stage. Funny thing is, we work closely with what is called the Alternative Schools Network here in Chicago. It's founded by Jack Wiest. He does a lot of amazing things, over 9,000 kids. This is the recidivization population of students, those that have to do credit recovery because they might have fallen behind on their grades, or they might have gotten into a little trouble and ended up in juvenile detention. Well, they're getting recidivized back into the academic world. Well, working closely with the Alternative Schools Network, we have found that theater and performing arts and our partnerships with these schools have cut down on the teen pregnancy rate, has decreased the violence. They've been doing better at being able to talk out their problems. They're doing better at being proud of their achievements, because oftentimes a young person may achieve something, but because it's not cheered on in their traditional village, we're that village for them. And Jack, we said, Jamalita, we have noticed a difference in many of our students after being a part of programming here. Now, again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a part of a particular show. It may be a teen summit. It might be a night at the movies. It may be a talent show, an open mic, or a concert that is specifically geared towards students. These are the activities that we're proud to do. We've done some amazing things with Chance the Rapper. And some of you all may be familiar with Chance the Rapper with all his 3 Grammys and all the things he's done, but he has 2 organizations. He has Social Works, which is his nonprofit arts organization, and Kids of the Kingdom, which is a faith-based initiative that he has with dealing with the summer camp of arts and technology, as well as being rooted in your faith. And that's important. Oftentimes, we don't take that moment to just be still and pray, or be okay with being rooted in whatever your belief structure is. We have students that are part of our program that are Muslim. We have students that are part of our program that are Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, Christian, you name it. And the thing about it is, it teaches tolerance, respect, and an understanding. And it makes it a little easier sometimes for students to communicate their faith, because oftentimes it's not a thing that they really want to do with their peer group. But here it's a safe space. We're 501c3, not a place to be able to shout, my God, my God. They need that, and we provide that. But pivoting from the point that you were asking about Broadway and Bronzeville in our Broadway Beyond Borders program, we are also in about 7 or so various countries. So we're in France and Paris, we're in London, England, we're in Cape Town, South Africa, we're in Nassau, Bahamas, we're in, Ghana, Accra, Ghana, so many, Cuba, Hogain and Camagüey. We've done some amazing festivals there, social justice festivals dealing with the arts, and the activities that we do when we're in these various countries. We go in, we work with their schools or their various institutions with how do you best shape your curriculum or your programming to be able to compete at an international level. We work with teachers on how to teach the students and utilizing performing arts to reach the student academically. And then, of course, our Paid to Stage program, where we're working with students abroad with writing and producing their own shows. And now with Netflix and all these other mediums, they're able to produce their shows and get them uploaded and actually see their bodies of work working. We're really proud of the impact that we've been making in Cape Town. We work closely with Apostle Joseph Stanford. Now there we've been able to work with students in the orphanage, and he's at an amazing theater that he opened the doors to myself and my staff and my crew, and we work closely with this team there. And we're going to be going back, so hopefully we can take you with us, Mr. Edmonds, so you can see some of the work we're doing abroad, because we know that the legacy that Mr. Graves left behind was the importance of economic empowerment of Black people around the world. And the arts is one of the greatest exports of America and the primary export of Black America. So instead of just letting people sharecrop our culture, we want to make sure that we own and operate how our images are being portrayed around the world, and how around the world our people are being showed to us here. So hopefully maybe we can talk to Butch and get you and the crew to come on over to Cape Town and check us out.
I'm coming. Don't worry about it. I got this. I'll talk to Butch. I'm definitely coming. So listen, we've done what I really wanted to do at the front end of this interview, which is to really not only give a clear picture of what all that the Harold Washington Cultural Center has to offer, but to help people to understand that when we talk about losing an arts institution, a performance venue, a cultural institution, it's not just, there's some little bit of entertainment that's missing. That it's a huge economic impact to a community, has a huge cultural impact, a social contract with the community. So it's just as impactful as if you lost a traditional for-profit business in the Black community. So I wanted to make that case. So segue.
Yeah, I want to add something to that.
Yes.
People don't realize that the arts are a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Mm.
and the arts are more likely to hire and employ small businesses and contractors from within the community. Like our lighting director, she's an African-American woman, but she has her own company, P&O Lighting. Her and her husband have a team. So when it comes to set design, when it comes to lighting, when it comes to even purchasing paint, the fruit for the lunches, locally sourced. The arts organizations, be it craft services for shows, we are a purveyor as an economic engine. Not just when people come to the show and they go dine at a restaurant locally or stay at a local hotel, we do boom the economy. But when we look at how many small businesses that are impacted by arts institution, the number is through the roof.
See, and that's what brings me to this next thing. Yes, you have your own institution to run, you have your own constituency to serve with your role as global director of the Howard Washington Cultural Center, but you have emerged prior to the pandemic, but certainly during the pandemic, among the major leaders who are championing and fighting on behalf of cultural institutions across the country, particularly as we try to get through this crisis. You've been recognized, for example, by the Congressional Black Caucus for your advocacy for the arts and cultural institutions. Talk to me about the work you've been doing, especially this year, with regard to dealing with Congress, dealing with making sure that legislation includes resources for arts institutions, not just as kind of a nice philanthropic thing to do, but everything you just talked about in terms of the economic health of our nation, the economic health of communities. Talk about the work that you've been doing to make sure on two levels. One, that arts institutions in general, because you didn't just do this for HWCC, you've been doing it as a representative of all arts and cultural institutions, make sure that they get stimulus relief and other relief to keep those doors open or get them reopened when they can. But then also you being one of the few, if not only Black leaders at this level, who is a champion for cultural institutions, to make sure that venues like Howard Washington Cultural Center and the other Black institutions get their share of the PPP dollars and other stimulus, because there's resources I'm sure you share with me that goes beyond PPP, to make sure that we not only not lose institutions like Howard Washington Cultural Center, but you emerge stronger because of the support you're able to get.
Well, I want to take it back just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, there was a bill that was going to be presented before Congress that was within the Ways and Means Committee. And on that, Congressman Danny Davis sits on that committee. And at the time, a few other congressmen, Chairman Camp, Dave Camp was a chairman out of Michigan at the time. And the legislation that was before the committee dealt with being able to utilize a contribution to arts organization as a tax write-off. And there were many people who you normally wouldn't think that you would think they would be for not taxing people to be able to be a patron of the arts. But some of the people who traditionally would be art lovers were championing this tax. I went before the Ways and Means Committee, and we were able to make our case and explain to them that when white art organizations get wet, Black art organizations, we drown. Mm-hmm. And that is a known fact when it comes to when it rains, it pours. So if it's affecting them, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, Lyric Opera House, the Met, it is going to ruin and crush us. So back then, when we were working on the tax break, we were able to work very, very closely with the Ways and Means Committee to show how the little boy that wanted to play the violin and how the patrons of the arts were able to help him navigate his way through college. And if they weren't able to have this tax break, that young man may not be playing the violin today. He's gone on to do some amazing things at the Met. Now, when we fast forward to what's going on legislatively now, that's just laying the historical context. That was 2013, and there were a number of other things that were going on between then and now. But every year we would go up to Capitol Hill for Arts Advocacy Day. One of our major hosts is actually Sheila Jackson Lee out of Texas. Love her. She would always host us there in DC to make sure that the arts were heard and that whatever funding we were pushing for, it got through. Legislating on Capitol Hill is very, very important and very, very key. And it's not about just having a lobbyist go out there. Your leaders need to see, hear, and feel your way about how passionate you are about the arts. So as we fast forward to the PPP, us joining the Chicago Independent Venue League and NEVA, we began working closely to craft out the legislation to help support arts venues and institutions. What was key about that is that many of the businesses that were getting built out and things were happening for them, they were not arts institutions. They look at performing arts venues and live venues as just a warm and fuzzy place, not just a real business. And we had to work so hard. And I want to thank our legislators, Robin Kelly, Congressman Rush, Congressman Davis, for supporting and making sure that that legislation got pushed through. And the legislation I'm referring to is the Save Our Stages. Initially, Save Our Stages was just about reopening, being able to get your payroll back together, take care of a few bills, but it has expanded tenfold to be very specific in nature and the language that it's choosing to ensure that those that are in disadvantaged areas, those that are women owned and operated, those that are African American owned and operated, and those that are veteran owned and operated get an opportunity to get first shot at the money. And the Save Our Stages bill passed, and it's going to be legislated. It's legislated all the way through, but it's going to be administered through the Small Business Association. So the SBA is going to be the conduit in which the money is going to get to the venues. And one thing I want to share with you, Mr. Edmond, is that over the years, we have lost many brick and mortar theaters. Now, a theater company may still exist as a performing troupe where they're able to perform in houses, but there are not many Black-owned theater houses. Here in Chicago, we have the Harold Washington Cultural Center, we have Black Ensemble Theater, ETA has their building, but other theaters don't really have buildings. A lot of venues that we consider Black-owned are really kind of like Black patroned, right? So these are theaters that we may manage, these are theaters that the theater company might sit in, but we're not owning the dirt. At any point in time, someone can get rid of the lease. At any point in time, someone can say, pack up your costumes and get up out of here. And we're seeing the Black theater and performing arts venues go the way of the dinosaur. And I say nay. I say that we need to use this point to invigorate those performing arts troupes, to figure out a way to at least have a storefront theater, right? To at least have 88 seats somewhere that you can call your own and pass down from generation to generation. We have to legacy build an institution plan for hundreds of years, just like our counterparts. And it is not an unrealistic thing to think about a 100-year legacy plan. And thanks to our board of directors, now we were founded by like Inez Andrews was an original board member, Chuck Barksdale, Marshall Thompson, one of the original board members. I saw you interview
And a
him
guest
before.
on my show.
The
A guest on my
acclaimed
show.
Otis Clay. Oh, I know we had some amazing legends in music who have passed on because our board consists of musicians, community reps, and business entrepreneurs, and they worked very closely with us. And as time went on, some of them have passed on, but we're still resilient, and our board still works very, very hard and gives us the support that we need. They came in and manned those phones and helped us call those congressmen. They called up the various volunteers. They made sure we did a PPP giveaway here. Our board of directors led that, and I'm very, very proud of them. I want to just shout out a couple of them, and I know that they're going to be watching. Miss Janie Bennett, H. Lorraine Jeter, who's like a super duper top person in the Talma chapter of the Eastern Stars here in Chicago. Miss, I don't know, you're like, Timolita, enough with the shout outs, but Brenda Ramsey, Terry Bell, our whole board, we're really, really proud of them. And I don't want to forget any names, but I would be remiss for not talking more about my mother, the founder of the Harold Washington Cultural Center, the Honorable Dorothy Tillman. Now, she was a field staff organizer for Dr. King. And one of the things that people don't really think about Dr. King with is the arts. Dr. King was an accomplished pianist. Dr. King had an amazing, beautiful voice. And there was nothing that happened in the civil rights movement that did not incorporate an artistic perspective. So when this building was getting constructed, anyway, when my mother at the time was an elected official, she said, no, we will not just have a small 200-seat theater. No, we will not just, we need to have something that can rival any theater with the state-of-the-art, top of the line. And here we are still 16 years later, forging the way in technology and turning the corner on what could have been an economically ruined for arts organizations like ours.
Yeah, leadership tip, everybody. a top executive takes care of their board. So I wasn't mad at all the shout outs. Smart executives know you look out for your board because your board looks out for you. But listen, you use the term that you used in private conversation with me, this idea of sharecropping our culture. And I want you to address that, and I want to, without giving it away, I want you to say it better than I can say it. But you talked about, we see it now because of the focus on corporate social responsibility and changes to try to change social injustice and the shift around what's fair and what's not fair in terms of support and distribution of resources and legacy building in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd and everything that's happened this past year during the pandemic. And you said something to me about now there's obviously money available, and it should be available to all institutions, but it has to be more than an institution that is not in the Black community, kind of importing, let's say, kids, doing great things for those kids, great, giving them all those things, but that institution is getting the money, but the community that those kids are from is not necessarily getting the money. And the institutions like Harold Washington Cultural Center, that's in the community where the kids are from, that they need to get the same level of support as an institution outside the community that may also do some great things, where they're literally importing they call them the customers, the clients, in to serve them. And you talked about that in terms of, and I'm probably not doing as good a job of explaining the way you explained it to me, but that it's not enough just to serve the people from disadvantaged communities. It's important to build the institutions in disadvantaged communities so those people can get the services in those communities. Again, you can clean up whatever I just said, but talk to me about the importance of recognizing where the money goes, how it's used, and whatever the source is, if you're really trying to address the problem and to address systemic unfairness in the economy.
Well, one, I want to take it back.
Mm-hmm.
Black Enterprise held an entrepreneur summit of some sort here in Chicago some years ago.
Yes,
Had to be maybe 2012 or so. And our young people we were reached out to here at the Harold Washington Cultural Center way back then to bring young people to participate in, it was like a whole business summit, youth, and this whole piece that was going on. And I said, well, that's cool, but our kids are pretty much theater kids. And I can't remember the young lady name at the time, but she says to me, theater is a business. I said, I know, our kids are really, I said, you know what? Okay, we brought our children down to, it was maybe the Hyatt, Hilton, wherever it was downtown. And it was important to the Graves family for young Black students from all walks of careers and career path to understand the economics of their business. So our young people were infused in a competition and they emerged as the winners because they're left brain, right brain thinker. They came in there and brought a more creative look to it. I'm bringing that story up because of this. The outreach of the institution of the Graves family and Black Enterprise, reaching out to our arts institution to make sure that not only did our young people get a chance to participate in the teenpreneur or the young business leadership piece that they were doing, but they made sure our staff, our team, we had badges that were brought in, and that is legacy building and institution resource sharing. Mm-hmm. That is why it's so important to preserve our institutions across the sectors. That one story alone is one of those examples that I wanted to make sure that we share. That and strangely enough, Project U, that's headed up by Sister Lisa Muhammad, those are the students, they normally do our acting here and they do our ushering and our ticket taking. They walked away with every single trophy, certificate you can name. And then many of them now have started because now they're older, 19, 20, 21, have started their own businesses. Most of them are going into technology, which is pretty cool, like app development, IT, social media marketing, or what have you. But as we look at the fact that other institutions would have brought them in, giving them the exposure to the business and the business development as an audience member. The difference between what they would do, and what Black Enterprise took that moment to do was it gave them an opportunity to see and be what they can be, not just by sitting in the audience, but by authentically engaging, participating. They got a chance to meet at the time. Derek Dingle came and sat with them. I think they got a chance to take pictures with Miss Butch Graves, the son, and all of that. Everybody was accessible to them. Unlike coming somewhere and feeling like you're on display and treated like you're an adornment sitting in the backseat of a theater watching someone speak to you. That is the difference of institutions working together. Fast forwarding, what we often see happen is institutions would give us tickets to shows to come and see and different things like that for students throughout the city of Chicago. But rarely do they produce and bring those shows into our community. Rarely do we see that our kids always have to be bused downtown or bused up north. And that is nothing against those theaters because they're doing what they think is the right thing. But we are more than a hashtag. We are more than a survey. We are more than a free ticket to be on the side of your ledger. We are able to run your theaters. We are able to run our own theaters. We are able to write the shows. We are able to be executives at the corporate level and corporate sponsors and sit on the boardships of. But there is no board development for young people to learn their way in the arts. There is no Carnegie Mellon seed program from when they're young here. They don't learn about Carnegie Mellon until they get way off. And by that time, they're not necessarily getting admitted. Their chances of getting admitted to Carnegie Mellon, which is the premier school for theater and performing arts, very rarely will they get accepted if they don't start on that track younger. We believe that oftentimes when this funding comes in and what it's called is it's called audience development and exposure. So let's say a particular theater, they may get, I don't know, $50 million to do audience development over a matter of 10 to 15 years so that young people can be exposed to the arts. Whereas we have a theater that may be larger than that particular theater that is able to easily identify with that student, where that student doesn't feel as though they're a guest, they feel at home. And we see that all too often. And what I want to challenge your corporate supporters that are watching today, and those that are small business owners and those philanthropists of all kind, when it comes to media and performing arts, what I want to encourage them to do is do a matching program for the PPP. Like the PPP is one thing, but we need corporate social responsibility to go beyond that. Understand that social justice is good, but economic empowerment is even better. So if you empower these institutions to be able to pour into their children, to be able to grow the programming that they're doing, you'll see your dollar go a lot further. Like, we want to implore them to not just reach into their little basket of donation money to say buy a few tickets. We want them to dig deep. We want them to do naming rights the same way that they do it there anywhere else. We want them to be able to be, okay, we're going to match dollar this or dollar for dollar that. Corporate social responsibility, the key word with it is corporate. The dollars is the money. How can the money get back into the community in a way that these young people feel as though it's not a social service project? They feel invested in, not handed out to. That's the difference. See, one of the things that I learned during this whole process is we're getting ready for Black History Month to come up, and then the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. King in April 4th, is the fact that they killed that man. They killed that amazing man because he was talking about economics. He was talking about the money. The Montgomery boycott was successful because it hit the pocket. So at the end of the day, we can't get lost in the sauce and just be sitting back thinking, oh, social, and it was this. No. I watched a video recently. Dr. King was running the numbers down. $25 million in 1967 to build this development and hire these people and create businesses and take them to Binga Bank up here in Chicago and the National Bread Basket. I'm bringing that up because those are the shoulders I stand on. Where we're sitting right now on 47th and King Drive is next door to where the Regal was. Now, the great thing about the Regal is we got a chance to showcase a lot of our talent there. However, it wasn't known by us. Right. You know, Stevie Wonder recorded Fingertips at the Regal Theater. The Jackson 5 did some amazing work here. So many people came and went, but we didn't own it. We felt like stars and then had to be shown the door. That is the key to supporting our institutions, our performing arts venues, our live venues, Black businesses. The key to it is understanding, giving a sense of ownership, not just entitlement. What I found is the difference between ownership and entitlement is an owner will see a piece of paper, pick it up. Someone who's entitled will step over it. So we have to begin to teach those things. Somebody will step over like somebody else will get it. We need to start teaching them young, because oftentimes children are so busy trying to get out of their condition, they want to get out and go far away. But if we build right where they are and we pour into them and we provide resources to their parents to get further in their careers, to get more education if it's necessary, to get access to whatever resources, if we do that as institutions, yes, we're an arts institution, but we're more than that. We are a leader and purveyor in being a role model to how to go further. And if we're not doing it for the kids in our community and the parents in our community, I can't expect anyone else to do it. So that's why these conversations today are important. And oftentimes they're hard conversations because we're happy to be invited to the party. We're happy to have that VIP wristband. We're happy to move the rope, get a little cone in the front parking. We happy to red carpet walk. We happy to have our name on the list. The pandemic was the great equalizer if it wasn't nothing else. Because there's no red carpet on Corona that you really want to walk on. Right. I'm just gonna say that there. But you know, at the end of the day, it is important for us to take these moments to understand why it is important to pour into our institutions. It's good to give and be charitable, and I'm never trying to tell anybody what to do or not to do with their money. But I know that sometimes it just feels good to walk into a place that's highly respected and coveted downtown or up north or in Manhattan to say that's my name on the wall. There are people that will break their neck, sell their birthright, and twist their wrist to make sure that you see their name is inscribed on the wall at some institution that is probably never going to invite them in if they were not creating that opportunity of $1 million here or 500,000 there. And that's why it's important when we have people that have a seat at the table on the corporate level that make decisions about the dollars. They have to think Black Advantage first. And if there's an organization or an institution they want to give to that still needs to get their footing straight, then figure out a way to find them, say, a nonprofit mentor to help them make sure that they get, or a small business mentor to get them in a position where you're able to give generously instead of just turning your back. Like, I think a lot of what we're dealing with at some people at the corporate social responsibility level is that they're dealing with post-traumatic slavery syndrome. And what I mean by that is that they work so hard to get there, to be the first, the only, the Black, the this, the all those, these, those, and thys, that they walk through that door and they slam that door behind them so that they can point and pick and choose, and they become a part of the systemic racism that is keeping our community oppressed today. Racism does not have a colored face. It is an institution of power. It is about economics. It is about being able to change somebody's life one way or the other and taking the latter route where it's going to be negatively impacting. Racism can be experienced on the bench at court, right? Whereas it might be a Black judge's face, but they are going with the status quo of what happens. Racism is when you have a legislator in Springfield, Illinois, that says we elected, but we can't do nothing to help because they won't allow us. They are, and whoever the they, right, but they are allowing their hands to be tied instead of speaking out and fighting. They're staying in the system of the status quo. Don't tell me as my legislator that I voted in what you cannot do, because I voted you in so that you can do it. So if you can't do it, get out the way. And that's for anybody at any level, be you clergy. If you are leading a flock of people and you don't have an economic plan for your church, step to the side. Be you a legislator, if you are not making sure that that money comes loose from the state capitol to your businesses or your local businesses or at the federal level, step to the side. And if you are a corporate social responsibility director person and you are not making sure that people that look like you first and foremost get to that money, step to the side. Or we're going to have to call for your head. Or we're going to have to drop squad you. Or we're going to have to show up at your door and just have a conversation and say, hey, we cheered you on to be on that boardship of not just for you to be able to have a wristband at the party and the this, that, and the at the opera. We want y'all to make sure that this money comes back. You got to remember when.
You sound like the daughter of Dorothy Wright Tillman. You also you also sound like a disciple of Earl Grey Sr., the founder of Black Enterprise.
Love him so. Love him
to sit on the board because they ran out of smart white people. You're there to make it.
so.
But listen, in the time we have left, and I'm glad you took it to this particular point, talk about ways that our audience, whether they're a corporate executive in a company that has access to resources, particularly resources that have been earmarked, again, during the past year, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars have been earmarked by corporations that are supposed to be designed to address the systemic racism that existed for hundreds of years, but there seems to be a spirit that says now we're going to do something about it. So this is, tell me how you can tell those people or just regular people who want to support the Harold Washington Cultural Center and institutions like it. What do they do? Who do they reach out to? I know they can go to BroadwayInBronzeville.com, but what's the best way that our audience can say, listen, we're not just going to share the culture. We're going to invest in the culture. And I think, again, I'm a champion of the Harold Washington Cultural Center. I think that's a great place to start.
Well, the first thing we want to say is give us a share, like, follow on all of our social media for the Harold Washington Cultural Center. Get engaged with us. Follow what we're doing. Share our story is at the bare basic minimum that you can do. Share this broadcast today. So it's important for people to hear our story, because I believe George Washington Carver said, people don't give to causes, people give to people. So at the end of the day, you have to feel the heartbeat of the story of what we're doing here. We service over 25,000 youth with performing arts programming and activity every year. And even in the pandemic, it looks like we're still going to be reaching our numbers. Why? With the virtual, as well as programming that we continue to do with our local public school. Second, I would often venture to say, take a look and see who's responsible if you're in an area that deals with corporate social responsibility in the advertising and marketing budget. There's a lot of theaters that are we're the Harold Washington Cultural Center, but we have a stage. Put your naming rights on your stage. It could be the blah, blah, blah. Better yet, it could be the Black Enterprise Stage Presents. And these are things that can happen. Naming rights, adopting a program, sponsoring a kid, and not just doing it in a way where it's one and done, but doing it in a way that it's lasting long term. If you have a bereavement, a bequeath plan, think about including us in your will, in your living will, so that when you transition, that's one of the things we learned that other organizations do. Other organizations, they get to people and say, hey, time is ticking on that clock. And we know that when you transition, you're going to have about $10 million. Can you earmark $1 million for us? Those are the things we need to start thinking about as Black people are beginning to get their life insurance policies and get their affairs in order. Consider giving to us posthumous. Hope I pronounced that correctly. And another thing that you can do, yes, another thing that you can do is, as we're getting ready to come back from the pandemic and before, consider hosting events and activities with us safely virtually. We can shoot your virtual event right here. One of the people I want to absolutely shout out, if it's okay, is Mr. Chris Gardner Sr. And if you guys don't know him, he is the Pursuit of Happiness. He took time to make sure that he came during the pandemic and shot a very exclusive video here on our stage. That gave us a spark of hope. Many of our charitable givers and donors have been still giving, but we need support from you. Those that are viewing right now, you can log on to BroadwayInBronzeville.com. You can hit the donate button. You can be a subscriber to our programming. You can come and you can give us some volunteer time hours. Lend your brain trust. We will be loading up our advisory board, which is a little different from our operating board, but our advisory board, it doesn't require you to have a whole lot of commitment, but we want your brain trust, your brain power. We want you to do some brain fundraising. That's what we need help and support with, just being transparent to everyone. Closed mouths don't get fed. And I want to shout it to the rooftops that I have been born, bred, and raised in the theater. Without the theater, a lot of things in my life probably would have went left, regardless of who my parents are. And that is what is important to know, that when you invest in institutions like the Harold Washington Cultural Center, you're investing in generations and generations and generations of up and coming successful people.
Listen, I can't think of a better note to end our conversation on. You know, you and I are going to continue to talk talk about these issues because, again, I'm a fan of you. And I'm a
Can
fan.
we get your commitment, Mr. Edmonds? Let's start with you. Lead by example.
I got
Make
you.
your
I
pledge
got you.
today.
I got you. And I'm coming with you to South Africa. And I'm personally going to do everything I can to continue the legacy of the Harold Washington Cultural Center. I think you're doing amazing work. I think it's necessary work. And I'm so glad that you took the time because this is a busy woman, y'all. Just figuring out a time I could get her on the show. So I want you to thank you for just even taking the time to have this conversation and being a guest on Beyond the Hype.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
We're gonna have you back. We'll work it out.
I look forward to it. Bring
like
Wayne Brady with you.
I
Oh,
like
that
the
one.
interview. I like the interview. So listen, everyone, thank you for joining us. I know you got a lot out of it. Please come back for the next edition of Beyond the Hype. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President, Executive Editor-at-Large at Black Enterprise. Be blessed.